Hello, everyone. This is Sherry, and you are tuned into She Said What She Said, the podcast where we interview badass women in the sports world and beyond. So we are back on the track tonight, and we are Penn State. That's right. We're actually going, though, to a different event group this evening. We've had an array of different sprinters, but Penn State is not just known for sprinting. We have some other ladies on our team who can do many different types of activities. And so our guest tonight is actually a very, very dear friend of mine, who she has just an incredible journey, an incredible story. And honestly, I didn't really even realize a lot of this in college. She just downplayed everything so much. And especially at that young age, I was very I say oblivious, but people are like, oh, I don't drink. I'm like, whatever. I never oh, what are your medical reasons why? But so our guest tonight is my dear friend Kate, and she is a phenomenal woman. She has had so many challenges thrown her way, but that has not made her give up. As an athlete, she was a record-setting hammer and weight thrower at Penn State. She is in the Rhode Island Hall of Fame. That's right. She is from the smallest state in America, but it is a very mighty state for producing hammer and weight throwers. And then she went to law school. She's been on the board of the ACLU, and she's also written a book about her journey. I have done none of those things. And so it's pretty exciting to surround myself with women who have. So without further ado, hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. Always wonderful to see you.
You as well.
Trying to fix your microphone.
Mic placement.
I gave up on using the mic, and this computer, the speaker is good enough because at a certain point you're just like, is it up here? Is it down there?
Well, I didn't want to block my Big Ten.
Oh my God, you still have that? You still have that jacket?
I do, yeah.
Yes. That was actually a gift. Yeah, that wasn't something we stole, because I know we definitely have some of our things that we would borrow.
I didn't do anything. I'm a law-abiding, ethical member of the bar, and I have never stolen a thing.
You gave everything back to Kevin?
Uh-huh.
You don't even have a uniform?
Uh-uh.
I have a Penn State uniform. I have a baton. I have some of the other stuff we were just supposed to borrow for NCAAs and things like that, or stuff like that jacket we were supposed to return at the end of the season that never got returned. Although I think that one it died a tragic death.
Yeah.
I wasn't as bad as some other people. I just gave Kevin back the things I didn't really want, but no, he did not get all my stuff back. It's fine. I should bring Kevin on.
Yes.
To track him down.
I would love to have an update. I would love that.
Oh my God. Kevin was our equipment manager, our facility and equipment manager. And Lord, that man had the keys to the room with all the shoes and all the shoes. Yeah.
Nike. Nike everything.
Nike head to toe, and always in blue, white, and gray.
Yep.
It's like our 3 t-shirts that we got every single year. 1 blue, 1 white, 1 gray. And then by the time you graduate, you have a nice plethora of the exact same shirt. So last time I saw you in person was before COVID, and we were on a romantic canoe ride together.
Yes, we were around the lake.
Yes.
The pond. And you were navigating. It was romantic, and we were with your parents, and it was a very lovely weekend.
They weren't in the canoe with us. It was just...
No, they were in a separate canoe.
Yes, it was a very romantic canoe ride, and that's why I love you. But let's start talking about your journey.
Sure.
And I think, because you've always been so open about it. I mean, you wrote a whole damn book about it. You've done podcasts about it. So you were born, correct, with this tethered spinal cord, or that developed after you were born?
So I was born with a ginormous tumor across the small of my back
Mm-hmm.
and spina bifida. And then by the age of 4, a part of that tumor wrapped around my spinal cord like a head of broccoli and was
Mm-hmm.
pulling on it as if you were holding up blinds at their highest point and just holding it there instead of setting it. And so they did the first neurosurgery in 1988 and took out most of what was wrapped around the cord, except for a part that was too stuck on there to
Mm-hmm.
take out completely.
Okay, so it
And
was
took off a bunch of my lamina. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we don't need that. It's fine.
Totally fine.
Yeah, it's fine. We don't need that. And then around the age of 4 as well, that's when you were first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, correct?
Yeah, 6
Is there
weeks
any
after.
correlation between that? Do they think?
They think that it might have been, the genes were in there, but
Mm-hmm.
the trauma caused it to kind of trigger into action. So yeah, within 6 weeks of my neurosurgery, I developed type 1 diabetes.
Fantastic. And I always like to make sure people understand, they're watch this later, all the terminology. Can you briefly explain the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, sure. So, and I think there's other types now.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. In fact, I hadn't until I joined a diabetic group and a few of the ladies were talking about it. So type 1 means that your pancreas can't produce any insulin.
Mm-hmm.
Type 2 is you're insulin resistant, and so your body usually can produce some. And so if you are doing well with your diet, exercise, you might be able to stave off having to take anything, or you might have to take pills.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, pills don't cut it. All of those ads that you see on TV for any kind of medication, they'll always say at the end, do not use if you're type 1 diabetic, which is frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm completely dependent on artificial insulin. It used to be from pig, and now it's all artificial. So I wear an insulin pump all the time. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you've been doing that since you were 4 years old.
Yeah, so like 34 and a half years.
No biggie. I mean, fortunately, your mom's a nurse.
Yes.
Is she still a nurse? Did she retire yet?
She retired.
Finally.
Big props to Mama Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
She literally saved my life multiple times. She wouldn't take a doctor's advice when they told her the signs of the tumor were no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tried to tell her I didn't have type 1 diabetes, and she was like, you definitely need to check. And as soon as they did, they were like, get her to a hospital right now. So yeah, she's literally saved my life.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's no easy feat for a mama bear. And man, yeah, if she hadn't been a nurse, that could have potentially been a very high consequential issue. Because I mean, a lot of parents don't know, right? I mean, the doctor tells you we'll just keep an eye. Yeah, it's
because I had double ear infection, and
Mm-hmm.
I also had lost weight, and they were like, oh, it's probably just from having the neurosurgery
Mm-hmm.
and kind of getting her appetite back. But she spotted that I was drinking a bunch of fluids and all this stuff. So it's really important to be vigilant about warning signs in your child or anyone else, because people who are adults now can develop type 1.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to just be very careful and talk to a doctor and make sure that they listen.
That's crazy. So type 1 can be developed at any point in your life, your pancreas can just be like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I've met countless diabetics now that developed it in adulthood, and they used to call it juvenile diabetes.
Yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
They don't anymore. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you're saying some of the symptoms like losing weight, unexplained weight loss, being super thirsty,
urinating a lot,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes feeling hungry, feeling lethargic, all of those things.
So always pay attention, children. Not just to children, to us
Yeah.
adults as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrifying. I guess I never really thought about type 1 being a risk factor. I mean, developing later. You always think of type 2 developing
Right.
later in life.
Right.
So that's like the diabetes. That is the tethered spinal cord mixed with that fun tumor. Yet you still decided that you wanted to become an athlete.
Yeah.
Tell us
Yeah.
about your journey of being the kid
Sure.
from the
Yeah.
hospital to the superstar athlete.
Well, my parents definitely wanted to get me in sports, not only just for building social skills and, discipline and a healthy exercise lifestyle. I tried any and every different sport. I did baseball, softball, soccer, field hockey, basketball, tennis, judo. Might have done karate at one point, but definitely judo. And I might be forgetting a few. But yeah, tried.
You literally named almost every single sport.
Yeah. And I didn't. I was okay in some. Like I did pretty well in softball, but it wasn't until I was going to go out for track, and my dad threw the discus in high school and college, and so I was planning on doing the discus and the sprints. And the coach said, "Hey, we've got this new event called the 20-pound weight," and it was relatively new for girls for high school sports. And I was like, "Oh, I'll try." So I tried it and didn't even realize that my uncle was a coach of a private all-boys school and had qualified for the Olympics when he used to throw. So I was able to do my track practice and then go over to the boys' school and practice with them every day. And I won 6 national championships in high school and set a bunch of records and made the junior national team that went to Chile.
No big deal. And we
Thank
always have
you
to say
to
hi to
Frank.
Frank. Frank is always with us. He's part of our network. So you wait, and then also was Hammer outdoors in Rhode Island as well. So that is for the track people that might not know track. Hammer is much later. It is thrown a hell of a lot further, so you cannot throw discus, javelin, or hammer outside. So that's why in indoor track we have the weight throw.
Yeah, and I actually remember loving the weight and not liking the hammer at first.
Really? I did not know that.
That quickly changed. But I think I had first become acquainted with the weight, and the hammer, you really need to rely on technique more. And at that point, when you're just starting out, it's not a natural movement in the body at all. And so, so then I got good, and then I think I set like the freshman national record, and I went to nationals my freshman year in both, and I ended up doing really well. So, that's how I kind of fell into it.
Yeah, and some of your stories I'm remembering from your book, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, it was your uncle. Because I knew your dad was a thrower. I knew that part.
Yeah,
Mr. Johnson, love him. And to give people an idea too of the difference, like if you're doing the weight throw, how many times do you spin before you throw it?
So weight is so difficult because it's much heavier and it's also closer to the body. So people will sometimes, in high school, do like 1 or 2 spins. When you get up there, it should be at least 3 spins. But hammer can be 4. It's beautiful, like a dance.
It's one of the most crazy things to watch, especially at a high level, of the speed at which these hammer throwers. I'm like, how do you spin that fast while holding a literal ball and chain, and then remembering to release it at the right time without getting dizzy and without stepping out of the ring. You can't do that either.
Yeah, it's a lot of practice, and they
Mhm.
keep changing the rules. But when I was
Okay.
throwing, if your glove, because you wear a glove to
Hmm.
throw it, you get calluses anyways. But if you didn't, your hands would just be torn up. Um, if your glove fell off as you threw and landed outside of the circle, it'd be considered a foul. I think they've changed that since. I don't
Didn't
know.
that at least used to be a thing for the shot put as well? If someone was wearing a hat and it
Yeah, I
fell
mean,
off?
once you get to at least college level, you're not even allowed to wear hats. But
Mm,
yes, yeah, any kind of article of clothing, yeah, which you obviously have no control over. But
right.
what are you gonna do?
Silly rules. And it's not related, but related. The women's world record holder in the women's triple jump. She was not able to do the long jump at the world championship this year because she had long jumped in triple jump shoes.
Oh my god. Okay. All right.
Like all these weird nuances in track. Like, is a triple
You
jump
know,
shoe going to be an advantage in the long jump? I don't
yeah,
know. Is the glove falling off going to be an advantage in the hammer? No.
I am in general, I am all for compliance with rules and
Hmm.
regulations if they make sense, if they
Right.
serve some sort of purpose. If not, not so much about them. Yeah.
Yet you still return your Penn State uniform to Kevin.
Well, you know, I'm, I am, I am pretty straight and narrow, I guess. But what are you gonna do?
I only saved one. I don't know why. I still have it. Do I wear it at night with a baton? No, I promise not. But I could. Maybe I
Well,
will. I
it,
should do some practice.
you should. You would still rock it. I ended up when I did Junior Worlds, we would trade our uniforms and because we got like a set of Olympic gear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we would trade our gear with other countries. So I have
Mm-hmm.
like
Oh,
sprint running shorts from Bermuda or something, and things that I would never in a million years be able to fit in, but they're in some bag somewhere.
that's fantastic. I actually
Yeah.
have one of Gigi Johnson, no relation, our coach's wife. I have one of her singlets from USA's because she made so many USA teams and she had all these.
Yeah.
She was just kind of giving us some gear. And it actually fits me too. I haven't worn it in a very long time, but maybe tonight I'll send you some special pics.
Please.
Oh man. And it's also interesting too, because I said you're from Rhode Island and tiny state, but you're one of the few states for high school that has the hammer throw and the weight throw. Do you know how many states have that now?
I think it's changed now,
Hmm.
but I mean, I graduated high school 21 years ago. So at that point, we were one of the only states that did it as an
Hmm.
interscholastic sport. So we really were like, we were just a superpower, and we would go to
Hmm.
nationals and it would just be mostly Rhode Islanders. Some
Yeah.
people from like, Georgia, Connecticut, random states, but it was mostly us. And now I think that's changed. There's a lot of
Okay.
people from Georgia that are like powerhouses.
Hmm. And then also gave you guys a huge advantage for college recruiting because, hey, if you want to score points in the hammer and weight throw at conference meets, it's probably a good idea to have people that actually already have done this sport before. What other schools did you look at? I actually don't know if I know this. Like, where did you take visits to?
Yeah, so I took an unofficial to UVA and Princeton,
Hmm.
maybe Dartmouth. I went to an official for Notre Dame. I was really considering Oregon,
Hmm.
USC, South Carolina was, pretty heavily recruiting me. The Ivies, I mean, I think my dad saved the recruitment letters. I think there was like 70 schools. And I swear, I could be remembering this wrong, but I swear I got a recruiting letter from a school that didn't even have track as a program.
Nice.
I'm like, all right.
Nice.
But, at the time that I was being recruited, I felt like my goal was to go to the Olympics. So I also saw Ivies as focusing more on the student part of the student athlete. So, and they don't give athletic scholarships, so it would have to be an educational scholarship, academic. And I was like, I'm just gonna focus on going to a school that's really gonna support my throwing ambitions.
Mm-hmm. And you chose correctly.
I did.
No big deal.
I chose correctly teammate wise.
Yeah.
And then that I love Coach D. She's amazing.
She's phenomenal. She's so
and
phenomenal.
I ended up having Jerry Daniels Elder, who was often an Olympic coach for the Hammer, be at practice. So that was amazing. I won't get into the head coach business, but it helped that my junior year, before they could start recruiting, actually the summer before my junior year, I went to Penn State and filmed a hammer throw instructional video for USATF.
Okay.
And because they were doing it at Penn State, they kind of like informally showed me around. Nice. And I got to meet a bunch of the teammates. And so I think that really like just sat in the back of my mind. And it's Happy Valley. So
yeah,
it just felt like the best fit.
Yeah.
In fact, I made my decision after coming back from Junior Worlds and canceled an official visit to Maryland, I think, to do early decisions with Penn State.
Do you know Shayna Cox did a visit to Maryland too?
Oh, so, I did not know that.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that either until I interviewed her, and I was like, oh, no idea. But I guess it makes sense. Y'all are East Coasters.
Yeah.
And I also took visits to 2 Ivy leagues as well. But yeah, I wasn't trying to go to the Olympics. I was just a jock, and I was like, I can't be with these nerds. And also it's like UPenn is not 3 times better than Penn State. You know what I mean? And it's like, there's no way in hell UPenn is giving me academic money. So so the great state of Pennsylvania, I did this one. Do you remember who your host was when you did your visit?
Why do I want to say it was Shay? It could have.
I
think it was. I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and I'm pretty sure it was Shay. Yeah. I had a great time. I had a blast. I felt so comfortable with the team, and obviously at that time the facility was state of the art.
Yes.
And I really felt comfortable there, even though it's a huge school. It did not feel overwhelming to me. It was pretty close to home, considering, Oregon was just way too far for me at that point in my life, especially being a diabetic. And the throws coach actually, I won't name names, but she sent me an email when I told her I was declining, that I considered you like a daughter, and if I don't see you at NCAAs next year, you'll know that you made the wrong decision. Whoa, that is
yikes.
Intense.
Good thing that, I would, that's bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So coming on to State College, we have a lovely team, #best team ever.
Yep.
We won some Big Ten stuff. But at your time at Penn State, your future of throwing, kind of changed a bit. I know you talked about this in your book. It's no surprise, you have not made the Olympics. You've made NCAAs and regionals. But talk a little bit about the kind of the changing of your expectations for the sport and how that affected you mentally as well.
Yeah, so my body definitely was like reaching its limit, and the way that our head coach at the time wanted to kind of suck the athletes dry so that they couldn't live a good quality of life afterwards, as long as they made her look good. Didn't like that. So our trainer at the time was like, look, you either do this the way that she's suggesting, or you're able to pick up your children when you're older and hold them. And I'm like, you know, maybe I have some choices to make. So, and I just kind of really, my body plateaued. I ended up developing a diabetic eating disorder that did not help at all. And it was crushing to realize that my Olympic goals wouldn't come to fruition. But I started looking into my future and deciding, you know, I might want to think about what job I'm going to get after I graduate. So I, at the time, was in criminal justice and sociology and a minor in women's studies and 3 classes shy of African American studies minor. And I was pushing myself a little bit too hard. And
nerd.
Yes, proud of it. Went to a job fair and talked to an FBI agent, and he was like, "You're automatically disqualified because you have diabetes." And I was like, "But I'm a D1 athlete. Like, I can squat close to 400 pounds. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "No, diabetics are known to develop eye problems," which I ended up developing. But he's like, "If you want to sue the FBI," we just had someone who had, I think his was like a hearing issue, sue and get in. And I was like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable suing my potential employer.
Yeah, right.
I think I'm going to go elsewhere. So I was like, why not try law school? Maybe I'll be a prosecutor. And ended up going and becoming an even bigger nerd and doing really well in law school, and then really getting into the nitty-gritty of the injustices of the criminal justice system. And I was like, I can't be a prosecutor. You know, when you're first starting, you have like zero discretion. So I knew that if I was asked to pursue a sentence or a deal that was unfair, I wouldn't be able to go through with it. And in general, most prosecutors are conservative. So I was like, you know, I'm going to do defense. And so I pursued that. I developed a niche. You can't really say specialty under Rhode Island ethics laws, but, you know, a niche of defending sex offenders and those accused of sex crimes, and advocating for fair legislation, and got heavily involved in the ACLU, the Rhode Island ACLU, and then became Rhode Island's representative on the national board. I was on the board of a criminal defense association, so I was fully into it, fully loving it.
And you were also getting, was this the time that you were getting death threats and hate mail when you were in Rhode Island? Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So first of all, I should say I wanted to be a federal agent, and my dad was a federal agent for over 30 years.
Yes,
and
he
I
was.
like, all about law and order. And then, you know, pursued a fairer criminal justice system while I was a defense attorney. And then you would think that when you're representing those accused of child molestation and rape, etc., child porn, that would make you receive death threats. But mine was about representing an organization that tried to send flowers to an atheist, and several organizations refused to send them because she had won a U.S. Supreme Court case about a school prayer, a banner in the school. And so when I took up that case, that's when I got the death threats and was kind of ambushed by a local conservative talk show host. And yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, no offense, I'd be more likely to send you hate mail as a child sex, whatever offender.
Yeah.
I feel like that would make me more inclined to write you a very strongly worded letter. But the flower thing, I don't think that would ever quite inspire me to attack you. And it's as, and I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about this, because for me, as a victim of multiple sex crimes, like, it's hard to think of, the defense attorney in this one. And, and again, we've talked about it, and I've always supported your career, but like, talked a little bit about, like, you said the injustices of it. What really, led you down this crazy specialization?
Yeah, well, so the first trial that I ever participated in was a man accused of molesting his daughter, his youngest daughter, and we went to trial. He got acquitted, but his relationship with his daughters, plural, was never going to be the same. He had been seen in the community as a child molester, and a person who had committed incest, and you can't get that reputation cleared. Even if you're found not guilty, you have your record expunged, etc. So the stigma that comes with just an accusation, and I know how egregious your experiences have been. I've experienced sexual assault myself, but not to that extent.
We're not playing sexual assault Olympics. It's all to a bad extent.
Yes, it's yes. But to me, a lot of the sex offender registration laws and laws that restrict where they can reside don't create an environment where they can rehabilitate and become law-abiding, productive members of the community. It's kind of setting them up for either reincarceration or
being homeless.
Off their meds, not pursuing counseling, mental health or sexual offender counseling. So there were a lot of situations, and to be honest, a lot of the kind of more acquaintance rapes, I felt, and there's been a lot of writing and advocacy about this point, that it stems from males' understanding of consent. Obviously alcohol, especially on college campuses, but affirmative consent versus silent acquiescence is a huge distinction. So I felt that there was a lot that, we needed to just discuss objectively instead of, obviously everyone probably knows someone. Well, I think everyone does know someone who's experienced sexual assault.
Yes. If you don't know someone, that means people don't trust you enough to tell you.
Right. That part. So I think it's really understandable for people to get emotional about it and to feel like, well, we just, who cares about the offenders? Like they're pariahs and we should really just focus on the victims. And absolutely there should be victim resources. But a lot of my clients were assaulted and abused themselves and then never received treatment to kind of process what happened, whether there was actual appropriate boundaries between adults and children, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
and then went on to commit very similar crimes themselves. So there's a lot of room for objective improvement, although a lot of people, when you try and have that conversation, will just quickly say that, I've had state legislators say, I'm pro child molestation, I'm pro sexual assault, like I'm trying to encourage people to commit
Mm-hmm.
sex crimes, which is ludicrous. I think there just needs a lot of room for objective, rational, emotionally detached conversations about
Yeah.
how things work.
Rape culture.
Uh,
I mean, we were just talking with actually within the podcast network the other day of, it was a picture of a dad and his young son basically holding signs in it, basically pro Watson, who just got his 11-game suspension for all that. And so this young child is learning from his dad that these women are, liar. And yeah, I agree. There is definitely, and there's a lot of people that can't necessarily have that conversation, because I know my first instinct is like, but
Yep.
Over the years too, I have found that the sex offender laws, I also agree with you, they do go too far. They don't necessarily do what they're supposed to do, and I do think they either need to be gotten rid of or completely axed, because it doesn't. And for me, my whole thing is like, if you are too dangerous to be in society, you should be in jail. If you are okay to be in society, then we should not put these restrictions on you. And that is
or
you can have like a probation officer, someone watching them, but I don't like the public shaming. You know what I mean?
Or if you're homeless, you have to report to the police department every single day.
That's
to
wild.
let them know. Yeah. I mean, how are you supposed to get a job if you're doing that? If you have to wear an ankle bracelet and have it recharged at your probation officer's office at the courthouse and wait like 3-4 hours, how are you supposed to hold down a job, etc. So yeah, I was shocked kind of at myself for stumbling into this and taking these positions at first, but the more I looked into it, the more I felt like things were really backfiring, and we should always be able to consider laws and make sure that if there are unintended consequences, that we address those.
Let's address them. Brief break. Hey, Clem, Dr. Kristen Clemson. She'll be a guest during my birthday week in September. Ooh. So we are going to have a very fun time doing a little early birthday celebration with my other thrower bestie.
Excellent.
But yeah, so you have this illustrious career, you're, with the ACLU, because again, these are civil liberties that we're looking at, and the type of work you're doing does correspond with some of the work the ACLU does. Then you have some personal things going on, and then you completely X out of Rhode Island and you go all the way to Texas. Talk about that. And in much detail or little detail as you feel comfortable.
No, yeah, sure. I'm literally an open book.
I know. I've read your book.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I was getting a divorce, and at that point had well over 36 eye surgeries and like 6 to 10 hand surgeries, all from the diabetes. And so I was, literally working myself to death. So I knew I needed a better work-life balance. So I didn't want to take any more bar exams. The position that I wanted to pursue at the Rhode Island Public Defender's Office, there was a hiring freeze, like literally weeks before I was, supposed to be receiving the position. So I decided to look into the federal system and applied to a bunch of federal public defender's offices, and ended up getting an interview in Del Rio, Texas, which is a border town, 150 miles.
Everyone knows about it.
Yes, they do now. It's maybe like 30 minutes from Uvalde, where there was that school shooting, and
Yeah,
100,
unfortunately.
150 miles west of San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And I quite honestly had to look it back up on a map after I received the call for an interview, because I was like, wait, where in Texas is this? And they all warned me that it would be a culture shock, and it definitely was. But I loved my time in Texas, and really, really loved working for the Federal Public Defender's Office. And unfortunately, my tumor remnant from 1988 regrew and was re-pulling on my spine. And I was misdiagnosed for over 2 years. I saw doctors in San Antonio, Dallas, Los Angeles, Boston, and actually had a referral from my pediatric neurosurgeon to a doctor in the brand new neurosurgery wing at Brigham and Women's. And he just kind of laughed me out the door, saying there's nothing wrong with me. And so I ended up, of all places, finding out in Rhode Island that like a world-renowned neurosurgeon for tethered cord worked at Rhode Island Hospital, and finally, after 2+ years, received the right MRI to detect that the remnant had regrown and was repulling. But in the meantime, I developed intense chronic pain, a bunch of neurological disorders.
Because this thing is growing for 2 years.
And
I also
pulling on
don't
the
understand.
spine.
Yeah, it's like I don't understand, like, with my, I feel like I'm decently medically savvy. Like, to me, if you get an MRI and they know your history, like, I don't understand.
Look, the first thing I said to the first surgeon I saw was, hey, I have this history and I have the tumor remnant.
And it's still there.
Maybe it's regrown.
Yeah.
And they all did a regular MRI as opposed to a 3D MRI.
Oh.
And none of them, including the doctor in Boston, the fancy, snotty doctor in Boston, none of them ordered the 3D MRI except for this doctor in Rhode Island.
Wow.
And which just, so I was told, I have this thing called adhesive arachnoiditis, which this doctor in LA told me I could get dementia from it, all these different diagnoses. And then once the actual images of my tumor regrowing and re-pulling on my spine, I went to a neurologist 2 weeks before I saw the neurosurgeon, and he said, maybe it's psychosomatic. Maybe you can't handle stress. And I was like, okay. I used to run my own law practice. I was on like 3 or 4 board of directors. I was doing advocacy work for the ACLU. I was doing nonprofit work. I was helping coach track athletes. And then I go to Texas and work like 45, maybe 50 hours a week, and have lost weight and have a healthy, exercise regimen, and I'm eating right. And that's when I develop too much stress, that I'm developing electric shock sensations to the base of my spine.
Just from stress.
I'm just, I can't handle it. I'm a woman.
That's the male, like when I, was trying to get my own diagnosis, for like PTSD and all that. Like, yes, I had an actual literal doctor tell me I was homesick when I had been living away from home for 5 years. Like, no, that's not correct at all. Not at all. That is, so, and with your spine, with the tethered spinal cord now, were they able to remove some of it with the surgery? How does that playing out? And from then, and also ongoing, because I haven't asked you about it in a couple of years. So
so I developed night terrors, all these, absurd things from it. Myoclonic jerks, which is just like my hands and legs would be like twitching. involuntarily. So they did a second neurosurgery March of 2018, like 30 years to the day, not to the day, but to the month
Very close.
of my previous neurosurgery. They got almost all of it out except for a part that had grown through the spine, and they couldn't, like, you know, get around the spinal cord to get it out.
Thing.
So, you know, and it's like a tripwire. So, and they cut off more lamina. So now from L1 to L5 of my spine, I have no lamina. Which for anyone out there, it's like, you know, the little, they're basically like horns on either side of the spine.
Little pointy guys.
Yeah. So all of my stuff is irreversible. So, and some of it has degenerated. So I have bowel and bladder problems. Basically, my muscles and nerves from my lumbar down aren't working right. I have intense diabetic neuropathy in addition to the pain from the spinal cord. I have developed a heart condition. They say because of diabetes.
Right.
Everything's allegedly because of diabetes. I have torn ligaments in my wrists, you know, years after I stopped throwing. My fingers trigger, so they like stay in place. I have sleep disorders. I have REM behavior disorder, chronic fatigue syndrome, and either narcolepsy or this thing called idiopathic hypersomnia.
We still haven't gotten all the diagnoses correct for the sleep, because I remember, what was that, 2018, 2019? You were
2019,
getting tested for that, and we still don't have all
you have such a good memory. So
I was on our canoe ride. You were talking about it, and I was so like, I was like, wow.
When I was in Detroit, I did an overnight sleep study, and then followed a second overnight sleep study with a nap study. So they like wake you up in the morning, give you breakfast, and then try and make you sleep 4 times. And they give you like 20 minutes to fall asleep each time, and then wait an hour. And 3 out of the 4 times I fell back asleep within 5 minutes. So, I mean, it got so bad that I was actually at an ACLU national meeting with Deacon, and we had visited Ash, 2 of our teammates from Penn State. And I was driving back from DC and almost crashed into the median because I couldn't stay awake. So I was put on a stimulant. They were also going to put me on Ritalin, but that didn't do anything. So I sleep like, I don't know, 12 to 14 hours a day. I usually nap 2 to 4 hours a day. And obviously
you're an indoor cat.
Yeah. Except I'm not nocturnal.
Right, you're which I'm so shocked you're even up at this hour. It's almost 10 o'clock.
It is way past my bedtime.
Way past your bedtime.
Only would do it for someone like you, my love. Because I was so flattered to be on this, and I was watching the episode with Shayna and Connie Simo.
Yes.
And I cracked up dying laughing when you mentioned oh my god, that Lil Jon song at the 2003
at
NCAAs, because that is, I have a distinct memory of that being the first time that anyone really had heard it, and that party.
Oh my god.
Will never forget that party, and like I think there was stabbing or something.
It wasn't a stabbing, it was a fight. It wasn't us, but there was the girl.
No.
It was a absolute shit show, and it was a phenomenal shit show.
Yes. Very memorable. Yeah.
Right?
That it's almost 20 years later.
Yeah, let's not mention that part.
Yeah.
So you have all of these, health issues. You had to medically retire, right? Because
Yeah.
we can't really see. You qualify for disability, but you decided that you wanted to write a book about that,
Yeah.
which is just so inspiring. Because you meet so many people that or you hear of people, kind of getting down on things, and then they just kind of spiral into depression, become
Yeah.
homebodies, which look, I don't blame them at all, but you went the other route and you decided that you wanted to become, put yourself out there as an activist. You've, done podcasts about diabetes, and you've written a book. So let's talk about your current, trying to, putting, you can't, even when you're asleep. I mean, you're asleep when you're asleep, but when you're not asleep, you are still going at that intense pace.
Yeah, I really had to grieve my former self and my former life. I still am. It's a long process because it's been over 5.5 years since I stopped working. But I felt like I had to do something, and it's not to dissuade or disparage anyone who can't do stuff, but I, felt like, why not just share my story, the good, the bad, and the ugly? And while I spend all this time in doctors' waiting rooms and in hospital waiting rooms, waiting to have procedures done, why not write a memoir? And so I wrote it in a little less than a year, and then sent it out to agents and publishers, and found a small independent publishing house, and came out smack dab in the middle of the pandemic in July of 2020. One of our teammates designed the book cover, which I'm so thankful for. She did an amazing job and used to work at Nike. She did.
Yeah, I hope you did that. Yeah, that's right.
And it's called Relentless, from national champion to physically disabled activists. And I'm thankful for the opportunity, because I've already received feedback from, there was a woman in the UK who connected with me because of the diabetic eating disorder. And I mean, when I was doing it, I didn't know there was a name for it. But
tell me what that means, right? Because you just kind of mentioned it. Make sure we know, what does that mean by the diet? A, what is the name for it? And then B, what does it mean that you were doing, which you should not have been doing? You were very naughty.
Yeah. So it's an unofficial term. It's not in any medical textbook, but it's called diabulimia. And 1 in 4 females with type 1 diabetes does this at some point in their life. Yeah. Shit. I had no idea until, recently. And while growing up, I didn't have, social media. I didn't have any kind of groups that I could connect with other diabetics who might be going through the same thing. So I'm so grateful for not only the pump technology that's out there that hopefully will eliminate this stuff, but, the community that's out there. So having to constantly check your blood sugars, and do, I think they said between 200 and 300 decisions a day when it comes to your diabetes and your health, you get burnt out. And as a young woman, I wanted to look more attractive to the opposite sex. So I wanted to lose weight, and one way that I pursued doing that was, you can actually overeat and not give yourself insulin to cover it, and your body kind of can't digest it. I mean, it goes through you, and it's very, very painful, but it kind of just doesn't count towards your caloric intake. And so that's what 1 in 4 female diabetics with type 1 have done in one point in their diagnosis or another. I did it off and on for 10 years, and that caused me to almost go blind, to lose mobility of my hands. I developed a mass in my breast that clinically mimicked breast cancer.
Wow.
And the tech who had administered the mammogram brought me into a room after she got the results and was like, we're going to hope that it's this diabetic benign tumor, because otherwise, and she just have face of like, you're a goner.
Ooh.
So that was fun. And diabetic neuropathy, which is very, very painful. It caused damage to the vagus nerve to my heart, which is what the autonomic disorder is, and you lose regulation of your body temperature, of your blood pressure, etc. So it is highly, highly discouraged, but it's something that especially females will do as part of, beauty.
Yeah, because it's like the cheat code, right? Of like, oh, you don't have to you don't have to make yourself throw up, so I'm not bulimic. I'm just gonna let it go out the other end.
And then another reason that I did it in college and in law school and then while practicing was when you go low, feel so physically weak, and it takes so long to recover from a hypoglycemic event that when I was throwing, I was like, I don't have time for that. The meet will be over by the time I recover.
Right.
So I would always keep my blood sugar high. And then during law school, I'm like, oh, I can't go low during class or an 8-hour final or the bar exam. And then it was, oh, I can't go low in court and like tell the jury that I need a break to go get a snack and some juice. So, it's all those excuses. And again, once again, the pump technology that's out there now helps regulate.
Yeah, because that's, they're external, but they're
essential. They're so close to being like artificial.
Basically basically like an implant.
My blood sugar the past 8 months has been the best it's been in 34 and a half years of having diabetes.
That's
wild. If only it had been around back then, but I'm so grateful for it now, because you can have liver failure. I was just doing a study at Joslin Diabetes Center about liver disease and kidney failure. I know a lot of people who are on dialysis now or have had kidney transplants. You can lose your vision. You can, there's all these massive life-changing, life-ending consequences of not taking care of your diabetes that you really, like, when you're a kid, you think you're invincible or that you can fix it down the road, but I'm still dealing with the consequences of my actions when I was younger.
Right.
So I felt it was really, really important for me to get that story out, as well as the story of being a patient who cannot receive decent medical care for the life of me. And to advocate being your own medical advocate.
Absolutely. Especially as women, because we are not in general taken seriously. There's my primary care physician is a woman. I really don't ever want to male doctor. Sure, I've had some great male doctors, but a woman doctor is what I feel like I need.
Yeah. And there's this book, it's like the Lady's Handbook to Her Mysterious Illness, and it's a writer based out of DC, and she had an autoimmune disease and was misdiagnosed for 15 years or something. And it was all stemming from a gynecologist who was doing a procedure and ended up clipping a bunch of nerves in her vaginal wall that created scar tissue that was pressing on the nerves, and then all these problems ensued. But she said, God, I can't remember correctly, but I think she said 85% of all autoimmune disorders are female patients.
Yeah, it's extremely, extremely high, and And then men tend to, and even like things like endochromosis. I'm not specific. The lady issues, right?
Yeah.
Endochromis. How do you say that one? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, I see an endocrinologist, so
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not an
I mean,
endocrinologist, but
but
it's that.
endometriosis, maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah,
endometriosis. I
yeah,
mean, it's so well known, and it still sometimes takes women like 10 years still to get diagnosed. It's
yeah,
like, wouldn't you think at a certain point, you're like, hey, and it's also the PCOS.
yeah,
That one also takes a long time to get
yeah,
diagnosed as well. And Dina Asher Smith, the phenomenal sprinter from Great Britain, she at the European Championship, she withdrew from the 100 because she had a leg cramp because she was on her period, and she's starting to speak out now. Like, if men got periods, there would be so many cures
yeah.
for
Oh yeah,
how it causes your muscle cramping for athletic wise, and we're just now getting to this point of like women athletes like Ellie St. Pierre. She talked about one of her races that she didn't do well on. She got a period, that morning, and she
yeah,
had heavy cramping, and she's trying to make the Olympic trial. And like, we don't talk about that, but there
no,
are so many things that we're just so far behind. And it's like, can you imagine if like there was a disease where like men's balls hurt? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like every month you could get
yeah.
cramping in your balls. Like it would
It's
be
sad to say,
so
but
high
yeah,
priority.
I'm now a rare disease advocate because
Hmm.
I like collect rare diseases and disorders.
You
Like,
do it so well too.
yeah, I've got bingo. Um, but there are so many people, and you hear so many stories of like a mom who has a child who can't digest nearly anything,
Hmm.
and so she has to buy like a $10 loaf of bread and $20 packet of cheese, and there's no research, there's no help. Even my sleep disorder, the idiopathic hypersomnia, isn't studied nearly enough.
Hmm.
And so then a lot of my prescriptions are off-label use. So you have to pay
Oh,
out of pocket.
yeah. We didn't even talk
Yeah,
about the
yeah.
medical insurance issues that you've gotten
Oh,
into, because
yeah,
that could be 3 more hours. Let's just
absolutely.
say it hasn't been easy because of
No,
off-label or brand name things. There's no generic, and there's
the
different
price of
classes they
insulin,
give.
yeah. There's been
The price
recent
of
legislation.
insulin,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just I'm never one necessarily to compare this to that, but I know I've shared it on Facebook with the whole thing of the drug that you can give people when they overdose on
Narcan.
opioids.
Yeah.
Yeah, how that
Yeah.
is like being everywhere, but how the price of insulin, which
You can't
that
afford a
you
drug
can't.
that you literally need to live,
Yeah, like
like
we're choosing
on a daily
drug
basis. Yeah.
addicts, which look, the opioid crisis is a massive thing. That was pharmaceuticals that they
Yep.
pried on
Yep.
people, and people did get addicted. And so for me, it's not necessarily like, oh, they shouldn't get free access to
Hmm.
this.
Yeah.
It should be affordable for all. There should be
Yeah.
no one should ever have to choose between eating and their medication.
Yep.
And we see it
Or
so much.
housing
Or
and their medication.
yeah, or
Yeah.
like having expired, medication, or trying to, doing the half dosages, all
Even
these things that people do because they got to
yeah.
live. Hmm. It's
My pump
insane.
supplies, not even just the insulin, but then my pump supplies for like a 3-month supply is like, I don't know, $400. And you can't sell your leftover pump supplies, your supplies from a different pump or a different version of it. You can't sell it anywhere, so you can't recoup any of that loss.
Wow.
You can donate it,
Hmm.
but you can't sell any of those products. So it's just I'm very fortunate to be able to afford
Yep.
my
Hmm.
health concerns and my life-saving medications, but
And that's a
there's
huge
so
part
many
of
that can't.
because of where you were born and you don't get
Yeah.
to choose the family. Yeah, it was another one too of like, EpiPens, right? Those are life-saving,
Mhm.
but they have
Yeah.
expirations and they want everyone with EpiPen, you're supposed to have two.
Yep.
So you're supposed to have two things that are going to expire in XYZ years, and
Yeah.
hopefully you'll
And then
never
they
have to
jacked up
use
the
them.
price.
And they
Yeah.
jacked up the price of the EpiPen, and it's this whole thing. And actually,
Yeah.
like my parent, their lake house, they've had some contractors there that have been like, I'm allergic to bees. I don't need an EpiPen yet, but they actually do have one of their contractors is allergic to, is it bees or wasps? He does have an EpiPen. He didn't have it with him. And he didn't get stung by anything, but he was saying like there's some like way to like get some from like basically Canada. So like my mom can have like a spare like in their cottage, even though you're not supposed to do that, because at a certain point, it's like, I know you like to follow rules and regulations, but at a certain point, the whole thing of like, it would be illegal for me to inject someone's EpiPen in them. You're supposed to like put your hand around, they're supposed to have written consent. Like, look, I'd rather save your life and then deal with the legal issues later. We'll talk about that later,
Right.
Yeah.
Again, I'm all for rules and regulations as long as they make sense.
Yeah.
But Bernie Sanders, that Ambassador Bridge, which was the part of Michigan that I was living in, Bernie Sanders was taking diabetics up there to Windsor to get insulin so that they could afford. Yeah, which obviously wasn't, on the up and up, but when it's life,
you have
life
to
or death.
do what you need to do, and I do not fault anyone for doing what they need to do stuff like that. But let's talk to, for these last couple of minutes, you've written a book, you're involved, but let's talk about what you're doing today and what you're going to be doing. What's your future looking like, Kate? What are your plans for your advocacy work and all these things?
So I'm back on the board of the Rhode Island ACLU.
I didn't know that.
Yep. It is. It's my home. And I'm so thankful to be back on. And I'm advocating for rare diseases and disabled community. I'm toying around with a novel that actually deals with affirmative consent and kind of like a Brett Kavanaugh type situation. So kind of like doing my little activism route through fiction, which we'll see how that plays out. But just trying to continue to give myself grace for what I can and can't do. There are some days I can't do a single thing, and other days where I can get things done, and I have to be okay with that and not fault myself. But
I would have given you grace if you needed to drop off today, because I understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it could happen. It could have happened, and I was willing to take that risk.
I appreciate that so much. I've missed board meetings because of my pain and chronic fatigue. I've had to bow out of testifying before the Rhode Island State House. So it's a lot of trying to not feel guilty for what I can't do. And I've pursued mental health counseling with a pain psychologist and done support groups. So it's an evolving thing. But when your life was so predicated on productivity equaling your self-worth, and then not being able to produce pretty much anything, and losing a profession that you felt was like your calling in life, all of that stuff is really heavy to deal with. But I do feel grateful that I can still do things like activism and be on the board and pursue interests and hobbies. So, it's just, it's fighting as hard as I can for the best quality of life I can maintain. And then, forgiving and moving past the rest.
That is such a lovely, lovely statement. And I don't think I have another question after that, because that was just the way that you answered that, forgiving yourself. And I think not just you, everyone needs to learn how to treat themselves with grace and forgiveness, and also treat others with grace and forgiveness, and realize that sometimes, like, if you cancel a meeting, it's not out of malice. You know what I mean? You're not doing it at them.
Right.
But you simply have to take care of yourself.
It's such a hard thing, especially for women. But one counselor told me, you have to treat yourself like you treat your best friend. And that really hit home, because I'm like, oh God, I would never tolerate my best friend treating herself like this. And so why am I okay with me doing it to myself?
Yeah. I've literally said to people when they're talking bad about themselves, like, hey, don't talk about my friend like that, I've seen that. And it's like, that is such like because if you're not going to talk about your friend like that, don't talk about yourself like that.
Yeah. It's a process. But that's why this is a wonderful show, and I've really enjoyed watching, and I'll continue to. And I'm so thankful and grateful that you had me on.
Well, I think that is the perfect outro. And on that note,
this has been a Chicago Clubhouse Network production.
Bye.
Bye.